Let's wrap up the finals and the playoffs for the Indiana Pacers. Why couldn't they quite topple the OKC Thunder? Is it correctable in any future series? And Tyrese Haliburton, it's official. His Achilles is torn. So much to get to and some thank yous on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Tuesday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today we're wrapping up the finals. Pacers Thunder, what exactly got sideways for the Pacers in their narrow loss 3-4 in the finals? Is it correctable in any future series where they're presented with similar challenges? Maybe so. And also, it's official. Tyrese Haliburton's Achilles is torn. He had surgery already. So we can talk about his own reaction to it, a lengthy post, what it means for next season a little bit. We'll get into that more tomorrow. And at the end, some thank yous for the season that just happened. We must start by wrapping up the finals. I know everybody wants to move on, and I would actually like to start with a message to fans of sports. I get that the devastation of the end of the finals and the way it happened and the way the Pacers' future was so dramatically changed that everybody really wanted to move on to the next thing, the offseason, the this, the that of the finances. I woke up to early flights with texts about this and that cap thing, and we'll talk about that. We got time. And all sorts of injury-related things and how that blah, blah. Like, you got to enjoy the moments. And I know that the moment of Sunday night stunk, but like the playoffs have been over for a day. Like, I think that needs to be the focus. And I think the enjoyment of sports for everybody is better when they really take a deep breath in the moments that are happening. And that's why we're talking about the finals right now and the Pacers series that ended on Sunday, because I want to talk about the series one more time. And I think that the thing that stands out to me in retrospect, looking back at it, is a lot of the chatter before, and I think correctly, was about the similarities in ways between these teams that break a lot of adages by playing fast or on a stage where most teams like to slow down and relying on their depth, which both of these teams continue to do all series, right? The Pacers played 10 basically every game in the finals. The Thunder played 9 or 10 basically every game throughout the finals. They played 9 sometimes, depending on Isaiah Joe. You know, it was a very, in that way, it felt like they were fighting the same battles. But in the end, the things the Thunder are so good at, their defense is unbelievable, right? One of the best the league has seen in terms of relative to the rest of the league. And the things they're specifically good at on defense, their strengths are very counter to the Pacers' offensive strengths. And I think we all knew that, right? I talked about a lot of that stuff heading into the series in terms of the stuff OKC wants to cut off and what happened against the Timberwolves in terms of the turnover stuff and how the Pacers were going to have to work through that. And I talked a lot about corner threes with various guests and how that would be a key shot for the Pacers and all sorts of this and that, right? And I think in the series, a lot of that manifested. What I mean by that is the Pacers did generate and shoot decently well on corner threes, and the skip passes Haliburton is uniquely talented at throwing did happen to work very well, right? All sorts of impressive counters to that defense did happen throughout the finals for the Pacers. But the Thunder defense, the peak of it and the things it's good at, countered so much of what the Pacers are good at in a way that was really, really challenging for the Pacers throughout the series, right? The turnover thing is the peak of it. The Pacers made it that far in the playoffs by being just an insanely good not turn it over team. That's a part of why their offense is so good. High volume of passing and ball movement with very few turnovers. And Haliburton's the face of that. And he played 6 to 7. He played all 7 games, whatever. Through the playoffs, like the playoffs are over. The Pacers finished above average with a 14.4% turnover percentage, right? If you ignore the finals, it's even better than that, obviously, because they didn't turn it over against the other teams they were playing throughout the rest of the rounds. In fact, entering the finals, the Pacers' turnover rate amongst every team in the playoffs was the third best, behind only OKC and Cleveland, right? They were doing a good job of exactly that, taking care of the ball. Their turnover rate against the Thunder was 18.4%. That would have ranked second to last of every team that played in this postseason. The only team that was worse was the Grizzlies, who only played 4 games, and they were all against the Thunder, right? That one thing was a huge hurdle that really baked into everything else that happened in this series, and I'll explain why in a second. But that was thing one. Thing two was points in the paint. Became such a huge hurdle for the Pacers. They had to be awesome as a jump shooting team if they were going to overcome this. And it became less of an issue to me for the Pacers as the series went on. They found better ways to get there with their cutting on drives, with their specific finishers against smalls, all sorts of stuff, right? They got more clever with who was setting screens, all sorts of things, right? We saw the counters the Pacers threw out, but then they'd win a game with like 30 points in the paint, right? It became untenable very quickly. And for a team that talks about paint to great so much, I know I overdo how much I say that phrase, but it was just such a big deal for the Pacers to have that kind of taken away as a strength and have to work through offense in a different way in terms of what they do, right? And if you look at the Pacers in the playoffs, and specifically their fewest points in the paint games, which for some reason I closed the tab right before I started talking. Good job, Tony. Their 2 fewest points in the paint games. Game 7 with 26 and Game 6 with 30 were their 2 lowest in the entire playoffs. In fact, of their lowest 10, 5 came against the Thunder. They had 36 in, I think this is Game 3. They had 34 in Game 1, 34 in Game 2, and then their last 2 were obviously dreadful, right? They needed to be better getting in the paint, and that is so much easier said than done. They had 50 in Game 4. No, that's Game 3, and they had 48 in Game 6. Wins, right? They needed to keep that alive as much as they could, and it was very hard to do against the Thunder. And so the 2 kind of hallmarks of the Thunder defense are, of course, good things. You want to take away points in the paint from an opponent, but they are also very uniquely strong against the Pacers and the Pacers' offensive strengths, right? And so I think by the end of the series, you saw what kind of wear-down effect that can have on the Pacers, not in the same way the Pacers have a wear-down effect. It just makes the Pacers have to work harder to generate worse shots. And that kind of bled into every other aspect of what the Pacers could do, because if you dive into a lot of the other comparative stats between the teams, it doesn't look like a series separated by much, and that makes sense. It was a 7-game series, right? But it looks like a series that, in theory, the Pacers could easily have won, right? A 98 pace. The Pacers are comfortable with that in a postseason setting. That's relatively fast, right? NBA.com says it's a little faster than that. Whatever. I'm comfortable saying a 98. They played relatively fast. Per shot, not counting free throws, per shot, effective field goal percentage. Thunder, 49.7%. Pacers, 52.8%. Per shot taken, the Pacers were a more efficient team. That's a good thing. Offensive rebound rate. Pacers were better, right? They were better on the offensive glass, 0.7%. Defensive rebound rate. Pacers better by 0.7%. So they won the rebounding rate battle by 1.4%. Assist percentage. Pacers dominated. Their ball movement was very threatening. So many stats that say, they did well on the glass. They made shots at a good enough rate. They played their style of basketball to the extent that they could against a team that was cutting off their specific strengths, and they made shots at a rate that was higher than their opponent. Like, that seems like a winning recipe. But then you look at some of the stuff I already talked about, and you see what happens on the other side, which is turnover percentage. The Thunder were 4% better, and in a series with a pace of 100, that's basically 4 extra shots per game on average, or 28 shots in a series. The margin of victory for the whole series was less than 20, right? Like, that's a huge deal. Game 4, very close. Game 1, very close. Game 7 was close until it wasn't, right? Like, all of this stuff adds up to a big thing. But I think this series showed the value of something the Pacers already put a high value on, and that's the possession battle. And the Pacers generally do a good job in this because they have, or had in this series, and will have at some point again in the future, the best high volume, low turnover guy in forever and in the league right now in Tyrese Haliburton. And so usually they've been able to skate by playing that way. They could not do that against the Thunder. And so even though they were making shots at a good enough rate, even though they did a lot of other stuff well enough, not awesome, right? They certainly had lots of stuff they could have worked on throughout the series. And we'll talk about individuals in a second. The turnovers just sunk them. It just absolutely sunk them, right? They have to in a future series against a team like this, because you know how this goes. Anytime a team has uniquely played success teams copy them. Memphis a few years ago when they were really good before they lost to Golden State. Obviously, everybody tried to do small ball to their own extent when Golden State was doing their thing. Unique styles get copied, and someones will try to do what the Thunder did. Now, obviously, the Thunder's talent makes it possible, but the Pacers have to be prepared for teams trying to turn them over more often in the future, and teams trying to shrink the floor and cut off the paint in the future. And they're better equipped for it. They adjusted to it. They played it 7 times. That's a lot of experience. That's like a 10th of a regular season. But in the end, the strengths of the Thunder became more than the strengths of the Pacers. And that was really, really challenging for the Pacers to overcome when they're a team predicated so much on offensive success, and that's taken away from them just a bit too much. A couple more things to get to from the series that went sideways for the Pacers, some role player consistency, and a few more stats that went the Thunder's way, including a big one that is absent for my intentional analysis of the series. Before we do that, we got to talk about 2 wonderful groups of people. First up, Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it can be easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. It's not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. They offer a ton of surprising insights so you can realize how much you're spending on certain categories. They have a ton of all-in-one convenience so you don't have to juggle multiple apps. And you can manage money with your partner smoother than ever. Track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKDOWNNBA at monarchmoney.com for half off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKDOWNNBA for 50% off of your first year. We also have got to talk about OpenPhone, the best way for you if you're running a business to make sure that you're not missing calls, because every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need, maybe for a plumber or a service provider. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait for just them? No, you moved on. That's why I did OpenPhone, the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. It lets you manage business calls and text from a single app. They have a shared inbox feature, which is a game changer, so you can jump into any conversation without missing a beat. They have an AI agent to handle after-hours calls, answer common questions, and capture leads so you don't miss a customer. OpenPhone is offering Locked On Pacers listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have an existing number with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no additional charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. We're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making me your first listen today and every single day. Or second listen, Locked On Blazers or Locked On Celtics. What? Drew Holiday to the Blazers? What? Anthony Simons to the Celtics? Huh? Ooh, weird one, doozy. That happened not too long before I started recording. Mike Richmond and John Krause, 2 of the best this network offers. We'll break down that trade for their specific Locked On shows. And for your listening, you can see me. Yes, I forgot how to shave and cut my lip very bad. So you get to see a nice little gash there. That was before Game 7. The hope would be for me that ended up being the worst injury of the day. It was not. We will talk about Tyrese Haliburton later. A couple other things to get to. And I ran through 3 of the 4 factors not too long ago, and I said, the Pacers shot it better, and their offensive rebounding was better, but their turnovers were worse. The other one is free throws, and that's where the Thunder did something that the Pacers just don't have on their team, right? And I don't really want to make this an officiating thing. Obviously, there were disagreeable calls in every game that people were frustrated with. 5% more free throws per field goal attempt for the Thunder in this series. That's a lot. That's a lot to overcome. They took 214 free throws in 7 games. The Pacers took 186. It's not a huge difference. That's 28 free throws. Guess what? The series margin was less than 28, right? Like, it all matters, and that's a big gap in a 7-game series. It's 4 points per game. If you make all 4 of them, that's a big deal. And here's the thing. So put your officiating thoughts to the side. I don't think most people listening to this like the officiating because Pacers fans are listening to this. However, the Pacers don't have a guy that you'd consider like a traditional foul drawer, right? Guys who have kind of a bag or an ISO game or whatever, who can get fouled a lot. They haven't really had that guy since Vic, and even Vic didn't draw that much, that many fouls. And for all the things Haliburton's good at, that's probably like the worst star thing for him on offense. And Siakam is a very finesse player despite being pretty tall, right? Like, I don't have to run through this. You guys understand that. And so that's something that separates the Pacers from, like the most consistent offenses in the NBA. Obviously, the Pacers have a top tier offense and are incredibly consistent, but you see the floor that is presented to teams when they can get to the line all the time. And that's why Mathurin has some games where it's like, oh my gosh, Ben Mathurin looks incredible because he can get to the line over and over and over again, and his floor becomes very high. Mathurin's that guy for the Pacers. I wasn't glossing over him at the beginning. I was talking about mostly like the starters, the high volume guys. The Thunder have SGA, who is the guy at that in the league, or one of the guys. And J-Dub was good at it in this series. That's a big deal. Like, it's just a big floor raiser for your offense in a way that the Pacers didn't have. And so beyond the stylistic challenges that might be coming for the Pacers in future series where they see similar defensive issues from their opponents, I think the biggest thing for them to take away is either they need to find a way to draw more fouls, which is not fun, but is important to raise the floor of your offense, or they need to stop fouling as much, which is obviously hard to do against these high foul teams. And that became a part of the series. Obviously, every game there were things happening on the floor that people disagreed with. But again, I think that it does matter. Like, Shea does draw fouls quite a lot. And that became the 4 factors stat that was the biggest gap between the two teams, is that 5 percentage points gaps in free throws per field goal attempt, right? Everything else was relatively close or within a few percentage points, and turnovers obviously were in OKC's favor as well. And those really stack up. Turnovers and free throws really stack up for kind of easy points. So that's kind of the biggest takeaway beyond the turnovers and the style thing, is that for the Pacers. And if you wanted to poke at other things that the Pacers could have used better in the series, a lot of their higher volume shooters were just kind of from 3. Haliburton at 35.6%, Siakam at 35.7%, Toppin at 36.1%. I keep clicking the wrong things. Turner was a dreadful 3-point shooter, 21.4% in the series. That's 4 of their top 5 in attempts in the series. Nesmith was hitting, and he took the 3rd most. That was good. Nembhard ended up hitting. He took the 6th most, but they didn't get quite enough. Just a little bit more there would have gone a long way for a team that was ridiculous with their shot making throughout the series. Any sort of consistency there, making shots helps a team more at 11, but they could have used a little bit more from that. And just, they have anyone who you'd consider a consistent night in, night out, all 7 games performer in this series. And I ask that because going into the 7th game, people were like, I don't know who's going to be finals MVP if the Pacers wins, right? And that's in some ways because of who their team is. They have all this balance. They have all these guys that can have nice games. They have all these guys that can make shots, and that's great. But, they had a lot of up and down play throughout the series. McConnell was excellent late. He wasn't as good at the beginning, right? Going into game 3, it was like, hey, maybe his minutes should go down. Like, Siakam was up and down at times. Haliburton hit some huge clutch shots, but he was up and down at times, right? Like, Toppin had 5 great games and 2 crummy ones. No one really had like an awesome series, like start to finish, in the way that maybe you could say SGA did, although I think he would even think he could be better. He didn't make threes at all. Neither did J-Dub. Like Caruso, though, I would say he had a couple games where he didn't make shots, but like he was pretty good in every game. SGA was pretty consistent, at least with his 30 and 6. Like, the Pacers just needed a little bit more consistency, and that's not really like a practice thing. That's just playing better, right? And so that's kind of where I walk away from the finals with my takeaways for the Pacers, is a little more role player consistency, and even star consistency would have been helpful. Obviously, Haliburton battling an injury for the last 3 games of the series influences that a bit. Turnovers, even against teams trying to force them, it's got to be a focus. And it's so easy to say that. The Timberwolves said it every game and still turned it over a billion times. The Pacers had the same problem, but they saw the results and what happened when they were able to actually succeed in doing so. Finding a way to draw more fouls themselves or fouling less would go a long way, because everything else they did was just a little bit better than the Thunder, and they made shots at a good enough rate, which makes it painful that they lost. And obviously they lost the game 7 in which they were winning at halftime. Like, they were close. A lot of these stats are going to be close. But this is a 68-win team that they just went, fight round for round with. And it was impressive to see in so many ways. But the differences in the series became things that the Thunder have as strengths and the Pacers do not. And then obviously, of course, game 7, if they had Tyrese Haliburton the whole game, many think they could have won, including me. He was playing amazing ball. They were winning when he got hurt. He was single-handedly keeping up with the Thunder for the first, 5 to 7 minutes of the game before he went down. Just, that's such a crummy way to lose it. Like, I could talk about all these stats all day, and I did. And they lost 3 other games that he played in. But it's just brutal that it ended that way, and that they didn't get the chance to fight at full strength in that game 7 and give themselves a chance and give him an opportunity to have more heroics. And that brings me to the final thing to talk about today. It is official. Tyrese Haliburton has a torn Achilles. He already had the surgery. I'll read a little bit of his post about it, talk about it a little bit, and then it's time for some thank yous coming up here on Locked On Pacers. Before we do any of that, let's talk about FanDuel. Summer sports, full swing. Whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following all the action. You want to make it a little more thrilling. With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while you're with your friends or getting sunburned on the beach. Many people use FanDuel to track their favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether you're placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like you're part of the action. If you're new to FanDuel, perfect timing. New customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. How about that? Open the FanDuel app and visit FanDuel.com to get started. Back here on Locked On Pacers, thanks for making me your first listen today and every single day. Locked On Thunder for your second listen. Riley will talk about why the Thunder won and what happens next for them, or Locked On Rockets, because the Rockets have Kevin Durant. I wasn't going to make a trade the second listen during the finals. That's lame, but it did happen, and that's a thing that happened. Also, a lot of belly aching about this, too. People saying, how is there a trade on the day of Game 7 of the finals? I agree that that's a bad look for the league. People are saying they shouldn't be allowed to make trades during the finals. No, they have to, because the draft is 2 days after the finals ends. That's a scheduling thing, not a timing of teams making trades during the playoffs thing. Okay, let's wrap this up. Tyrese Haliburton, it's official. Torn Achilles. News got out about 1 o'clock today, right when I landed in Orlando for my layover, getting home. And then the Pacers announced later in the day he was going to have surgery in New York with Dr. Martin O'Malley. That's the guy who I believe, I tried to look this up, but I believe he did Tatum and KD and a couple others. And I believe Edmund Sumner as well, and Isaiah Jackson and a bunch of other guys, right? James Wiseman. So well experienced with the surgery. Obviously, there's a reason lots of guys go to him when this happens. And so the surgery's over, right? Tyrese Haliburton already posted a picture on the gurney in the hospital at 10:57. He posted it. He said, don't even know how to explain it other than shock. Words cannot express the pain of this letdown, the frustration, unfathomable. I've worked my whole life to get to this moment, and this is how it ends. It makes no sense. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's quite long, but I appreciated candid, heartfelt thoughts from an athlete in this moment. You don't really get that. Usually it's just like, I'll be back soon, peace, or like heart emojis of his team's color or something like that. And don't get me wrong, any post is appreciated from anyone at any time, but it's very thoughtful that he went through all this and expressed his feelings and talking about, what's going on. And he even said sorry to the fan base, right? That they lost on the stage after getting there and getting so close and having that ripped away from him. So one, I encourage you to read that. Two, now that we know for sure it's a torn Achilles, I'll briefly touch on this and then I'll do off-season stuff really throughout the week. The draft is coming up like that. This obviously changes next season significantly, right? I would wager very strongly, I will not ever say 100%, but pretty dang close, that he will not play next season, right? Like, it's a long recovery. It is currently June 24th. I'm talking, and this is getting posted. Like, Isaiah Jackson got hurt in November and is not playing. Like, that is a 7-month absence. 7 months. What am I saying? That's an 8-month absence. He got hurt like the first day of November. James Wiseman's been about 9 months at this point, right? 9 months from now would be next March, right? That's basically the end of the season. And that's just the best case of recovery. That doesn't even count like playing well. Jahlil Okafor, who played for the Pacers this year for 1 game, but albeit on a 10-day, he tore his Achilles in 2023. He played for the Mad Ants. Maybe it was late 2022. Regardless, he played for the Mad Ants this year, and I got to talk to him about his Achilles recovery. He said he was able to like do activities at a reasonable level in like 9 months, but he didn't feel like himself playing for like a year and a half, right? And so for Haliburton, that would be the start of the 2026-7 season. I would imagine he's not going to play next year. It happening on the very last game certainly makes that timeline as painful as possible. And so obviously that changes their offseason. It is a stroke of great fortune that they traded for their own pick from the Pelicans, a trade that I was very confused why the Pelicans did unless they had something else lined up. But it's great for the Pacers that they were able to pull that off. But that certainly clouds what their next season is going to look like. They should not tank. I will get in front of that. They should not tank at all. But they certainly need to think about their next season differently. However, I think everybody is completely missing the point of what they should do next year, especially with regards to what they should do with Myles Turner. I will really dive into that tomorrow in kind of like a half draft, half offseason preview kind of deal. And then we'll leapfrog into the draft a little bit more on Thursday when they actually have a pick. Maybe they do something on Wednesday night with their first rounder. But it's one human element first. Massive bummer. A+ person, A+ dude, great ambassador for a team in a city, and led one of the most magical, historic playoff runs ever. Horrible way for it to end. Horrible for him. I mean, seeing him on crutches was just like crushing. So hope for the best for Tyrese. This rehab can be hard and mentally draining. Like, I have only very recently seen Isaiah Jackson on court doing workouty stuff, and that's with like a heavier ball and all that. We'll see where this goes for Haliburton with the recovery timeline, but it's tough. It's a tough injury. However, he's only 25. Recoveries from this injury have not been nearly as devastating in the last decade or so. Players have come back and played very well afterwards. And that is the hope now for Tyrese Haliburton. That will come up in my offseason discussion tomorrow and Thursday, how this goes now for the Pacers. But it's official. That's the news. And that is now the reality the Pacers face. A brand new beginning right after a brand new end. If you want to know what that reference is from, please check out my most recent article that I wrote about the end of the Pacers season. And now it is official. The end of the Pacers season. Wrapped up the playoffs today. Me babbling to myself, getting my thoughts out there. The pivot to offseason mode comes now. Crazy that the first offseason podcast I do is going to be on June 25th, I guess, unless you count the draft trade they already made. If you want to know more about that, because you might not have cared at all when it happened, but now you should a lot. I put that out. I think it happened between game 4 and 5, maybe game 3 and 4. I can't remember. Maybe 5 and 6, whatever. A couple days ago back, you can hear about 18 minutes of me telling you why it made a ton of sense for the Pacers to do it even before Haliburton got hurt. But now it's offseason time. We will pivot to the offseason. And when a pivot comes, when the season ends, I must say thank you to all of you for listening as every day or as often as you want to, or if this is your first time, thank you. I couldn't be at these games and cover this team as well as I do without people interacting with the things I make and write and talk about. And I meet a lot of you in person. Someone asked for my autograph this season. Like, that's a new thing. And on one hand, that made me feel like not uncomfortable, but just like, oh, this is interesting. But on the other hand, it does make me realize that, like, man, I impact a lot of people every single day. And I'm very grateful for that. And it's very fun that I get to do this. And I couldn't do it without all of you listening as often as you can. I didn't know what the season would become when I got fired from a job after the first game. I didn't know what I was going to do. I still don't know what I'm going to do in sports media, but this was a very fun season. The Pacers made it fun by being quite good and making it very far. As much as it is a lifetime of memories for fans, also lifetime experiences for me to get to go to these games. And I'm very blessed that I got to do it. And it wouldn't have been possible without the support of listeners every single day, like you and you and you and you, whichever one of those yous you want to be yourself. Pick your favorite. So thank you very much. And thank you for listening today to this episode of Locked On Pacers. I'll be back tomorrow getting you set up for the offseason. And I think, again, given the volume of questions I'm getting and what they're specifically tailored to, I think everybody's missing the point of what the Pacers' focus should be in this offseason and heading into next year. But thank you all for listening today. We'll be back tomorrow talking Pacers in the offseason as Wednesday approaches. You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Tony Arish. This podcast is on Twitter at Locked On Pacers and Instagram under the same feed or under the same handle. Thank you so much for listening. See ya very soon.